Thanks to everybody coming out here at the Edinburgh Hotel, and certainly a lot more fun to do this after a win, and certainly a thrilling win last week, the home opener against Bloomsburg. I'd rather be ugly and win than pretty and lose.
That's right.
And there's a lot that we're going to get to here today. And, of course, Clay Cunningham is going to be joining us. That defense, I don't know what you're feeding Papley, but he's got those boys playing. Lots of positives, some negatives, but we're gonna touch it all. Plus, we'll get you ready for the Cal Vulcans as well. I'm Joe Lodanosky, of course. It'd be kind of silly for this not to be Jake Nulph, but it is, the head football coach here at the Borough. We talk a lot about culture and the building the blocks and where we're going next, and one step in front of the other. And I thought a lot like with Penn State at Auburn, they have not run the ball in 2 years, and then it happens. You guys couldn't run the ball all afternoon, except when you absolutely had to.
Yeah.
Wins are wins, friends are friends, pals are pals. But in terms of could that have been a moment that we might look back at a year and a half, 2 years from now and say it all changed that day?
It very well could be. We'll see what the future in the cards. But we have a resilient group. And, the thing that we spent a lot of time in the spring, Joe, in this spring in 22, learning from the 21 season, was those areas that we failed in those one-possession football games. We rehashed, we revisited, we re-practiced, and then in the fall camp as well, in overtime being one of those scenarios where we got into a game last year in overtime, we ended up losing. There were a lot of things. You had mentioned it was a crazy game. There were times in that football game where I thought that we could have put it away. Unfortunately, we did not, and that's a credit to Bloomsburg. But there was also times in that football game where momentum started going their way, and we could have cashed it in, and we just kept playing. And that's one of the mantras in our culture of a program is no matter what, just play. Next play, just play. Good, bad, even keel, 60 minutes. And, they took the lead on the fumble. It went up 17-10. We didn't blink. We had a tremendous play by Allen. Strizinger on the interception, it returned it all the way down to the 3. That gets us the tying score there. We had another opportunity where Anthony Mendocino intercepted a ball in the fourth quarter. We kind of stalled out there. But that last series, they were moving the ball a little bit. We had to have a couple guys make some plays. Malcolm Johnson, I know, had a couple tackles for loss on that series. And we get it into overtime. And to our guys' credit on the sideline, I could just feel it. There was an emotional element there that we were ready to play, and we knew once we got it in the overtime, especially when we won the toss, defense out first. They had -2 yards in overtime. And then offensively, I thought that we had talked about it on the headsets, and I mentioned this in the postgame, Coach DeMeo and I and the offensive staff of this is what you're going to get. Let's make sure that we're prepared and we put those right players in those scenarios. We get a penalty on the first down play, a pass interference call. We hit Thad, I think, on a 5-yard crossing route on the next one. We took a shot, didn't get it. But then we came back to it on third down. We knew we were going to get one-on-one on the backside with Hopkins, who's a big red zone threat. And to Isaac Bernard's credit, and Joe, I don't know if you remember this from the game on Saturday, but they brought all-out pressure. He held it just long enough to let Hopkins clear, and he threw it to where only him could get it. And we got the pass interference call, and then we get it 1st and goal from the 2. And our version of Jerome Bettis, Keon Anderson goes in and scores. He had 3 carries, 2 touchdowns. Not a bad day, right? But we made plays when we had to. And to your point, if you look at the stats, we didn't run the ball very effectively at all. But there were opportune times in that football game where we ran it and we had to move the sticks. I thought, if you look at the stats, you look at Isaac, he was 63% passing. He had 290 yards. He'd thrown the pick. But honestly, it wasn't his fault. We had a receiver fall down. The receiver fell down. Isaac threw it to a spot, and it just happened to be their defender that was standing there. But it was a gutsy performance by him, Joe. He got hit a lot. He got sacked 6 times. But he didn't blink. And to me, there were games last season that he played in, and particularly I'm thinking of the Gannon game where he didn't have that bounce back, that next play mentality. And I thought it was a very gutsy performance by him. It was a gutsy performance by our football team in general. And, ugly, style points don't matter. We'll take the win.
Yeah, the one thing that we sort of have this kind of pattern when we go glass half full, glass half empty.
Yeah.
I thought, and to your point about Isaac Bernard, I thought as the game went on, I thought Bloom kind of might have schemed him up a little bit differently.
Agreed.
Because he got worse. I think in the first half, I figured he only threw 3 incomplete passes.
Yeah, that sounds
because
right.
he had 3 receivers fall down, which again, this isn't backyard football. You're not waiting for them to get open. You have to ensure that they're coming out of their break. You're hitting them as they come out of their break. He was almost perfect. Mm-hmm. And then I thought maybe they junked him a little bit and kind of changed some fronts for him. But I thought he was really good in the first half. And then I think maybe he learned a little bit about, how adjustments are going to be made. Those guys have been doing that and doing it together for quite some time. And Bloomsburg's got a culture that I think a lot of schools would love to have. But I want to look at third down, in particular in the second half, defensively. You don't hold somebody 3 for 15 on third down for the game and not keep them behind schedule. And I believe both interceptions came on third down because it was 3rd and long. And, I thought, because Coach Papley and I talked, prior, are you going to find out if this kid can read coverage or not? What are you going to do? But I thought, we talked, third down's a great stat, but you are not going to find third down success if you're not any good on first down. Glass half empty, I could just make the same opposite argument about everything with your offense. Right. Schedule's so important.
Yeah, well, the thing is when excuse me, when you win the choice downs, which is what we call first and second down, on defense, you get teams in the 3rd and long, and then we have our third down packages. We're able to do some things where you're playing the percentages of it being high pass. Their quarterback was a freshman, and let me tell you, though, he's a tough kid. He's going to be a really good football player for them. I got a lot of respect. We hit him early and often, and we gave him a couple of different looks. And, but that was the game plan. We played triple option, Joe. Let's call it what it was. They're a spread variation of the triple option. I thought our guys on defense did a great job of who had quarterback, who had the running back, who was supposed to be in the alley, and then our safe guys had to keep the lid on the pot. And they did that. And, I think about, Clay had a monster day at the office. Again, another 14 tackle performance from him. Wilfredo Diaz played as good and as productive of a game as I've seen from a linebacker in a long time. He had over 10 tackles. He had a sack. He had a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, an interception, 3 tackles for loss, you name it. He was everywhere.
And pressures.
Yeah, and a lot of pressures where we hit their quarterback. And so that was, again, 3 for 15. We held our end of the bargain on defense. Offensively, with the inability to run the ball. And now I thought that Bloomsburg did a really good job, Joe, of taking away our access throws. Because you're right, in the first half they were playing a cover 3, corners off. We were able to hit our RPOs. We were able to hit our green light throws, and Isaac got in rhythm. Well, in the second half they took that away, and then they started blitzing a lot more. And that kind of got us off schedule. And then when you get in 3rd and long against anybody, it's really hard to convert that. And we always talk about, the 2 reasons why you win, the 2 reasons why you lose. And as elementary as it sounds, we got to stay ahead of the sticks, especially with a young offensive line and a young offense that, we have big play capability. I think everybody can see that, especially on the perimeter and with Isaac being able to throw that to those guys. But when you put all that stress on the quarterback every series over and over and over again, it's just a real, you're playing with fire.
The other element that I thought, and, necessity was certainly the reason. We talked about Wilfredo Diaz, and, I always joke with, I'm going to start calling Papley, Tony Manny Diaz Papley, because, he's keep. Let's talk about some of the flexibilities you have now discovered out of necessity. Yeah. Wilfredo Diaz being one, Malpica being another. Exotic and athletic are going to be your MO. And we talked about that from week one.
Yeah.
What was the size? How are you going to hold up? And obviously, I guess the triple option is not as much as the eye. We're just going to run blast and ISO all day long,
right.
And we'll have that conversation when we get there. But you now have some pieces that Coach Papley is going to have a great luxury of moving around, and some very athletic pieces. I remember one play in particular where Diaz came off the backside and Malpica came off the front side, and they basically got there in unison.
Yeah.
When now you can start running them in the same gap. I mean, you can really start doing some things. Again, we're not Rome wasn't built in a day, and I think the last couple of weeks there's been a lot of progress into where you ultimately want to be.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing where when you play sub-package football like we do, we match personnels. We try to get athletes and speed on the field. And the ability to blitz and disguise coverage and be exotic, quote unquote, is something that, we do. It's just what we do. It's in our DNA on defense. The play that you're talking about was the third down in overtime. And how big of a play was it that, we dialed up a pressure. We got both guys clean off the edge, and they met at the quarterback and forced an errant throw. That is going – and we're extremely young. We talked after the game about, our puppies. And I had made the comment, well, our puppies can bite. We're starting to – our goal as a football team, offense, defense, special teams, is to get better every week. And credit to our guys. They learn it. They want more. What can we build off of this week? How can we tweak things that, it's almost the more that we give them, the more they're thriving in, if that makes sense. It's a good problem to have. And, we are going to be a team that I think from a defensive standpoint, you mentioned, we're athletic. We can hit. We can run. We're going to have to continue to build on that arsenal. And when teams want to mix it up and play the game in the phone booth instead of the parking lot, I think we're going to be able to do that with as well because, you had mentioned Malpica. That's a 245-pound body at linebacker that, we have the ability to sink him down. We can do certain packages where it maybe looks like we're in our odd, but we can get to our four-down stuff. And we just got to keep the offensive side of the football guessing.
The other, and of course, Reed Martin, again, the special teams player of the week. I'm going to be honest with you. You don't win that game without him. I mean, I was having the great debate with myself if I was going to give him the player of the game. I mean, obviously, Wilfredo was off the charts, and, he ultimately got it. But you don't win that game without Reed Martin. And, his ability to flip the field. And, it's literally – it's so funny because, I think of – you look at how many games are won and lost with the special teams, and nobody notices the special teams until they don't work.
Correct.
Very rarely is somebody like, oh, wow, what a great punt. They just take it all for granted. But, he was so good. He had 5 punts, 40.6 along a 48. Of the 5, 3 were inside the 20.
Yep. Yeah, I told you, was at week 2 when we did the show after Franklin Pierce. He's our Swiss Army knife. He's tough. He's gritty. He's competitive. The biggest compliment I could give Reed Martin is he's a football player, right? Like, you notice him when he plays defensive backs. He makes plays. In our kicking game, and let's not forget he kicked off 4 times and had 2 touchbacks.
Yeah.
And then we fake the punt in the third quarter, and he runs it for 29 yards. He's a weapon. And teams are going to have to prepare for that, and it's not an easy thing to do. We're going to continue to build off the Reed Martin package, but all 3 phases have to work in unison, right? Like, it's funny, we talk as a staff, and I've been part of a lot of football teams, Joe, over my 18-year coaching career and then playing since I was 7. The championship caliber teams I've been around aren't elite in any category. They're just really good, and they complement each other. And that's exactly what we're building at Edinburgh, where, the offense, if the defense is struggling, the offense has to bail them out. If the offense is struggling, the defense has to bail them out. The special teams have to complement that style of play. And that's honestly, I think what we've seen throughout the 3 weeks is, it's not pretty. And there are plays we give up and there are plays we don't make, but they complement each other very, very well.
All right, so I got to ask you the hard one here.
Yeah, sure.
Running the ball has been not very good, and no secret, and probably equally as bad and equally as detrimental is, obviously, I guess if you had the answer, maybe I wouldn't be asking this question, but red zone, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. And, at least it was 3 for 5, but, you get into that red area, you got to score touchdowns. And as we got California coming next week, generally speaking, field goals don't lead to upsets.
No. And, it's funny you mentioned that because, again, it's a point of emphasis. We were 0 for 6 against Shepherd.
Yeah.
And think about how different that football game would have been, even if it was 3 out of 6 with 21 points. 3 of 5, much improvement, but still, it's not good enough. The thing that is frustrating, but it's part of the learning experience, is with our youth, the missed field goals are something that, we haven't been talking about much, but, we can't miss field goals inside the 20. That should be automatic. And, we've been struggling in that area. We went 1 for 2 again, and we had talked today as a football team, and I'm a pretty transparent guy, as you know. We've got to make that. Those are, and we call it the auto zone. Anything from the 20 in, we've got to make. And, we don't get to overtime. We win 20-17 if we make the field goal, and you never know what play in a football game is going to change the outcome, the urgency. But field goals, to your credit, and we talk about it defensively, if you hold teams to field goals,
feels like a win.
Yeah, you're going to win.
Feels like a win, yeah.
And we're not putting the ball in the back of the end zone. And we know that. Look, it's a point of emphasis. We're not happy. We're not satisfied about it. We got to figure it out. We got to get it done. And to me, I thought when we got into overtime, because that's in the red zone, 25 and in, and that's high red. We get inside the 15, that's low red, and then inside the 5 is the goal line. And Coach DeMayo, Coach Tisleretz, Coach Cox, Coach Green, all the guys on offense, I thought that before that period started, because the defense was out first, we were locked in. We knew the play calls that we were going to go out and execute, and we did that. And that half glass half empty, glass half full, to me that's half full, because now, okay, we know exactly what it is we're going to do. And to be honest with you, sometimes I think as coaches we get lost in the element of maybe necessarily scheme and plays instead of players, right? There's a thought. We talk about, who are our A players? Well, whoever our A players are, we got to get them down there in the red area, and we got to give them a high probability of success to succeed. And when you've got a tight end as big of a threat as Hopkins is, you got to try to throw him the ball in the back of the end zone. I thought, we had a similar play in the second quarter where it was the series we missed the field goal, where we had Brody List all by himself, high in at the upright in the end zone. We just didn't make that play. And we've got to just continue. All the looks are there. It's just a matter of executing it now.
All right, we're going to take a quick timeout. Clay Cunningham, who has had a monster first couple of games, is going to join us. This is the Jake Nulph Show. We're live at the Edinburgh Hotel. We'll be back with more right after this. All right, and welcome back to the Jake Nulph Show. We're live at the Edinburgh Hotel. Of course, we're here each and every Monday, 7 o'clock. We appreciate everybody that came out. Clay Cunningham, who has been spectacular, double-digit tackles in 2 or 3. You didn't have, I don't think you got the double digits at Shepherd, but monster game, 14 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. Coach Papley and I had talked a lot in the preseason about not knowing what to expect. Now, you're a guy that's been around a bit. We didn't know because you lost everybody from in front of you basically this year. Was it a sort of a collective effort in that linebacking core to be like, we have to be, the backbone of the defense? Because certainly your group was everywhere on Saturday. You know, we talked about how important Reed Martin was, but, you know, the linebacking play was just spectacular. Was that a point of emphasis, or you guys just that good and ended up making plays all the time?
I think that's just kind of the expectation we set for ourselves, and we didn't know who would be the two linebackers that were in there, or three linebackers in some cases, but we knew that whoever those two guys were, they needed to step up and make plays for our defense.
So, you know, you talk about, you know, now we're getting into West play. You know, those games were fun, and you would have liked to beat Shepherd, and you're happy you're 2-1. But now these games mean more. You know, these games mean a lot more. And, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it or root for it, you know, the West is very, very good and very, very deep. And, you know, California just gave Shepherd all that they wanted. Noah Mitchell is a really good quarterback. Is that going to be the key again, is to get home to the quarterback? I mean, that was what kept you alive for as long as you were against Shepherd, because literally Tyson Bagent was confused. You know, you guys had dialed up, you know, a lot of exotic looks and stunts and stuff. Is that going to be, I mean, you have to get to the quarterback again on Saturday?
You know, I think the pressure's always great, but I think as long as, you know, we do our job in the defense, if someone's job is to get that pressure, of course we need it. But if someone else's job is to do something else or cover someone or do something, you know, everyone just got to do their job and communicate with each other. I think that's more what it is.
Now I joke, and I say this, I mean, I'm joking, but I'm saying this certainly seriously. You know, when you were on the pregame show for, I don't even know what game it was, but anyway, you were on the pregame. I mean, you're a guy that looks like a linebacker. The neck roll, I mean, everything about it. You know, tell us what it's like. I mean, you literally, when somebody that's not familiar with the team shows up and they're like, okay, now pick the linebacker. They're going to point to you. That's got to make you feel good.
Yeah, you know, I've embraced playing linebacker, and I love playing it. And, you know, I feel like the more you play linebacker, the more you grow to look, you know, like a linebacker, and I think that's just kind of what happened with me.
Well, I'm a big fan of the neck roll. I will certainly say that. A season is just like a game. It's quarters. Basically, the first quarter's in the book. You're 2-1, and I'm not talking about record. I'm not talking about record. But you've played 3 games. How pleased are you where you're at defensively? And now that you've seen, you know, some of these young bucks make plays, you know, how different now is your expectation for that defense?
I don't really think the last 3 weeks have changed, you know, my expectation for our defense. I've always expected us to do great things, and it's been great to see those young guys step up and make plays. And, you know, going forward, I think the expectation's the same for us. We expect to be great, and, you know, we're going to do everything we can to do that.
Now, I assume I'm going to go out here on a limb, and you probably played quite a bit of fullback in high school, I would guess. You played a little bit of football, or a little bit of fullback last week. You were in for all the rushing touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. You and Malpica were in there in the heavy package. I mean, I would imagine there's a little bit of jabs there. The defensive guys, you know, hey, yeah, you guys can't score. You got to rely on us to come in here, get this thing in the end zone. But you know, when it mattered, you know, you guys were part of it, and that's what, you know, Coach Nulph and I talked about. Yeah. However you want to dress it up, it didn't matter. When it had to be done, it got done. What was that sort of like in overtime? I mean, I know that you had to know that you were going to punch that in, but what you sort of walk us through that?
You know, it's fun going out there on offense. It's something I did do in high school. I would come in and kick out DNs and do that type of stuff, and it was great to be able to come out and do that in overtime. You know, whenever the game's on the line, you love to be on the field, and I was just happy I had the opportunity to do it.
And now you got a brother on the team. Tell us a little bit about your journey, why you picked the borough, and you know, again, you know, it's a great community, and it's certainly fun to be a part of. What made you pick it?
You know, from the start of recruiting in high school, for some reason, something felt special about Edinboro. And then, you know, I was being recruited by the old staff that was here, and then that staff was gone, and it kind of seemed like wasn't going to come here. But then, Coach Nulph came here, and when I signed, it was just him on the staff. And, it just felt like he believed in me, and he had a great vision for this program. And, that's why I came.
Clay Cunningham, the featured Fighting Scot this week. Again, a monster game. I ask this to everybody. I don't encourage growing up, but when you inevitably are forced to do so, what are you going to do in your life after football?
I'm a major in early childhood education, so I'm going to teach early childhood education and probably coach.
When you said I just literally shut my eyes and envisioned you in bike shorts, and I saw the football coach from like the 80s when you said that. But I appreciate you taking some time, Clay. Keep up the good work, man. Keep making us fans of the Neck Roll proud.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to preview Cal when we come back. Jake Nulph's going to jump back up on here on the stage with us, and thanks for hanging out with us here at the Edinburgh Hotel. This is the Jake Nulph Show. Back with more right after this. All right, welcome back. It is the Jake Nulph Show. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're hanging out here at the Edinburgh Hotel, and thank you for everybody that has ventured down to join us. So 2-1, we're talking about stacking blocks. Yep. Got a heavy block coming. The Cal Vulcans, Gary Dunn, one of the probably, I don't know, the Mitchell kid's up there in arm talent. I mean, he can,
no question.
He can spin it. Yep. Just gave Shepherd everything that they wanted. You've seen him on film. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. They've got a bunch of guys out there. I mean, I know that it's not. Gary's done a much better job with the DNA. It's not as transient. He's got a more permanent culture established there. They may not be as good as they were, 10 years ago, but I've seen them once. They're a pretty good football team.
Oh, okay. I've known Coach Dunn, Gary, and I consider Gary a friend. I've known him since 2010 when I was at St. Francis and he was the offensive coordinator at Morehead State. And then we competed and battled when he was the OC at Duquesne. I would call Gary when I first got hired as we were going through the pandemic, and he was a tremendous help and an asset for me. So, we get the opportunity to compete against each other this week, which I'm excited about. He's done a great job at that program. And the thing I can tell you is, his background's on the offensive side of the ball. My background's on the defensive side of the ball, so it's always been a competitive nature there. You had mentioned Noah Mitchell. He's shattering records at Cal as we speak and currently still doing that. He's a tremendous quarterback. He's got great arm talent, good vision, makes really good decisions. He's athletic enough to run. He's got weapons on the perimeter. Number 3, I think it's McCann. He's a really tough, physical downhill back. He's got 0 and 9 on the perimeter with Cam and Jackson. 81 Willis is a threat that's been on tape that was caught my attention. They played number 6 Langley this week against Shepherd. Joe, they were winning that football game in the fourth quarter up by 10. And talk about their offense and as high-powered as they are, their defense is – they're a really, really good defense. They're physical. They play the right way. They bring pressure. They hit you. Their front, their linebackers, their secondary, you name it. It's a very similar group to what we played last year in 2021. We're also talking about a football team that was 9-1 and one Slippery Rock game away from representing the West in the PSAC title game. So, it's a challenge, but it's another opportunity for us. With what we did against Shepherd 2 weeks ago, I feel like that we did enough things that I had noticed some of the stuff that Cal was doing on film was pretty similar. So, and they executed clearly at a higher level than we did. And, they got caught behind the 8 ball a little bit in the fourth quarter, Joe. And when you give Tyson the ball, the D2 player of the year, they kicked a field goal with no time on the clock to get it to overtime, and then they end up winning the game in overtime. Cal's had 2 really tough football games the last 2 weeks where they had to go on the road to Shepherd, and then they were on the road at Kutztown the week before that and lost a very tight football game there. So this is a seasoned group. It's a veteran group. And most importantly, Joe, it's a physical group. And it's a skilled, credit to them. They're a really solid football team.
Now, you alluded to that some of the things that you had done to get to the feet of Tyson Bagent, Cal had done.
Yeah.
So do you have to totally scrap anything that you did with Shepherd and had success with, because not only have they seen it, they've actually used it.
Yeah.
Obviously you're going to have to get to Mitchell. It's not, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to either. I mean, he's not necessarily Bagent, but he's a lot closer to Bagent than most. So,
absolutely.
letting him, climb a pocket, you could be in for a long day.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, when you play a guy who's a 4-year starter like Mitchell is, and he's seen a lot of different things in his career. We're just going to have to continue to build off of what we do and execute at a high level, give him some different looks, different coverages, different fronts, and keep them guessing a little bit. And then, offensively, we had talked about the ability to stay out of 3rd and long, right? There's a thought. And with this defense, it is feast or famine. They bring pressure from everywhere. Anytime, they are extremely opportunistic. So, they got after Tyson in that Shepherd offense, and they had him under duress. They sacked him a bunch. They hit him a bunch. They forced him into some bad throws. They got him off of his mark, etc. It's an opportunistic group. And then the other thing that is very impressive for me is, and look, I saw it firsthand last year when we played them, was their special teams game. They have some very dynamic returners, and they do a great job in the field position. I mean, we are going to have to be clicking in all 3 phases on Saturday. And it's an exciting challenge and another opportunity for us, as we had mentioned, because, Cal's a legitimate top 25 team in the country. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I've seen them. I mean, they're a really, really good opponent. And it's another opportunity for us to go on the road, tighten down the hatches, get together, and play those type of caliber football teams that you play in the PSAC.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that I'm not certain that people necessarily realize is when you have a crossover with the likes of Shepherd, you then, once you take Slippery Rock and IUP and California into the equation, you now have 4 historical programs that are not only. I mean, they're not hoping to make the postseason. They're expecting to make the postseason. That's kind of the way that they function. And we talk all the time about the culture and how do you emulate that type? How do you create that type of expectation, that type of environment? Because again, I don't believe that year in, year out they always have elite players. I mean, they certainly do, but the discrepancy in talent is not that great. I believe that they just think we're Cal, we're Shepherd, we're IUP. This is like our God-given right, like Steeler fans. They think they're supposed to win every year. Like, how do you create that sort of mentality?
Well, the thing that, if you look at what we've been doing since my time here as Edinburgh, at Edinburgh as head football coaches, and this is our 2nd season, we were in a 1-possession ball game with a 9-1 Cal team last year that it came down to a 2-minute drill, and we got to get the 2-point conversion, but we've been there. We get into those games with Slippery Rock. We had the game with IUP last year. We played Shepherd already in 2022. So with our youth, the best thing that we can do to emulate that and simulate it is we've already done it, Joe. Well, that's the best part of the PSAC, and what was clearly a huge reason why I took the head job here at Edinburgh was because you play in those games all the time. You had mentioned you draw a crossover in a Shepherd, a Westchester, a Kutztown.
Yeah.
Those guys are legit top 25 contenders every year. Plus, then you throw in the West, and you've got the IUPs, the Slippery Rocks, the Cows, and what better way for our football team? We went down to Shepherd. It wasn't the result that we wanted. I thought at times we played, and we had mentioned this 2 weeks ago, there were moments in that football game where we marched the ball all the way up and down the field. We were executing at a high level. We couldn't finish. There were times that we give their offense everything they could handle. It's the consistency thing, Joe, and that's really what it comes down to, and that's the message that I'm going to tell our guys is we haven't played a 60-minute football game yet. That's what the consistent programs do. They play for 60 minutes, and you mentioned they expect to win. This will certainly be a challenge for us, but it's one that we're looking forward to because, it's just the next game on the schedule, and our guys get excited for these type of games. I had mentioned today in our meeting that, you're only guaranteed X amount of games a year, right? So we have a group that is starting to thrive with that. They are excited to play on Saturdays, and we're putting the work in, Monday through Friday. We're paying the price in practice, and it's always an exciting thing for me to see our guys just go out and compete on Saturdays. Those building blocks, quote unquote, that we're talking about from the program, we're certainly checking a lot of those.
So we did talk about the red zone struggles. The Shepherd struggle was, turnovers.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not making this easy on yourself,
no,
man.
We're not.
I mean, if you had the magic wand to fix this, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd
right.
be, you'd probably be in Vegas somewhere laying odds, right? But how do you've addressed it?
Yeah.
But how do you fix it? I mean, is there something that you've seen that you're like, this is kind of where the root of the problem lies? Is there a pattern in which you've picked up on it? Because again, you're not going to win. Like, it's an unrealistic expectation to think you can turn it over that many times and win. Now, obviously, if you're forcing 5 turnovers a game, that gives you a puncher's chance, like it did this past week. But
right. And you can't rely on that every
week. That's what I'm getting at. So how do you fix now, because it's 2 straight weeks of turning the ball over? Not that it's ever a good idea to turn it over, but some in really, really bad spots.
Yeah. Again, it's not just one thing that's leading to that issue. When you look at the Shepherd, I felt like we tried to force some plays that weren't there from the quarterback position. Well, when you look at Saturday, we fumbled it away. And ball security, focus. So, sometimes the defense makes a tremendous play. I thought on the opening series when Thad popped the run, the kid put his helmet right on the football. And it wasn't that he had it loose. It was covered. The kid made a heck of a football play. And, talking to Thad, that's a guy that he hadn't fumbled a ball since high school. So football's an interesting game that way. However, to your point, it's 2 weeks in a row, so it's a problem, right? It's not something that's just we're going to ignore it. So I can tell you this, we're going to have a ton of turnover circuits in practice this week. We're going to take care of ball security drills, and we're just going to continue to emphasize. Sometimes as a staff we talk about, Joe, that it's not necessarily what you're teaching, it's what you're emphasizing. Well, you can trust that we emphasize taking the ball away on the defense, and we've got to protect it a lot better on the offense, and that starts with everybody. Everybody always thinks, and we joke about the NFL and the Monday morning quarterbacks, and everybody thinks that they can play that position until they go in there and have to make a decision in 2 seconds, so they're going to get rocked. But it starts with the offensive line. It starts with the running backs, the wide receivers, the quarterback position. Ball security is an entire offensive responsibility. So we've got to get it fixed. It will get fixed, or ultimately we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And if that's the trend, well, then we're going to have to play some other players.
I've got an idea. Have you ever seen The Program?
Absolutely. One of the best movies of all time.
We see a bunch of dudes running around campus. I just,
Darnell Jefferson.
Come from behind him and see
carrying the football.
See if I can create a fumble. All right, so we always play this game. 2 reasons you win, 2 reasons you lose. California, again, I think we talk about that experience, a veteran quarterback.
Yep.
That's why you try to start a guy as a freshman in hopes that someday he's going to be your eyes in the sky out there. But obviously that's going to be a major advantage for them. That, because you pointed out, that guy's seen a lot over the years. 2 reasons you win, 2 reasons you lose.
Obviously, I think 2 reasons we win were we score when we need to score, especially from a field position standpoint. We didn't even get a chance to talk about this, and I had wrote this down, Joe. You look at Saturday's game, and I talked to our group about this. There were 5 times where we had the ball with 60 yards to go and in, and we didn't score at any of those drives with short fields. That's a problem.
Yeah.
So the ability to finish drives and then the ability to not give up the big play, which, as you saw against Shepherd, when you play top 25 opponents in the caliber and the high-powered offense that Kyle has, we can't give up the big one. You're going to have to make those guys earn it. And if we can capitalize on offense and not give up the big play, we'll win. And then to counter that, I think if we're in third and long situations again with this defense and we're not ahead of the sticks, hey, it's going to be a long day in the office for us on offense. And then, the other thing, the takeaway battle, period. I feel like if we can get in the plus in that area this week and not, you take away the ball 5 times in a football game, you're thinking at worst you're +3, right? So those things are going to be magnified in a high-stakes game like this on Saturday.
The one thing that I did want to ask you, again, you got to limit big plays. You got to make big plays.
Yeah.
Mike Watkins is probably your home run hitter. He had a big 38-yard touchdown catch.
Yeah.
Last year, he legitimately averaged 40 yards of reception. Have you gone away from that? Has that been taken away from? That's probably your guy that is most likely to take the lid off of it.
Yeah.
And he did last week. Are they doing something differently to him to prevent that opportunity this year?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, when you look at a defensive game plan and everything starts with the front, right, and then off of that front, the second level has to support the front, the coverage has to support all of that stuff, where I thought that Bloom did a great job in the second half. And you had mentioned the success we had earlier in the football game. We just didn't come away with points. And again, it almost came back to bite us. But they started blitzing a lot more. They started playing a lot more press coverage. They were just taking away a lot of the access stuff. So to where we've got to ID hot side adjustments, et cetera, when guys are bringing pressure. And then ultimately, Joe, look, when we get a one-on-one, sometimes that's not a bad thing. But let's make our guys make football plays on the outside on the perimeter. And Mike Watkins is certainly a guy that can do that. I think Thaddeus Stanfield's a guy that also has that ability. And then, we should get Amani Bailey back this week, who's another big play threat. So I think that everything from a defensive standpoint, to an extent, they are taking those guys away. And when they do that, we have to counterpunch and come back with something else.
All right, final thought here. We talked about all of this, the opportunity and, all the cliche stuff. But, at the end of the day, this is all about execution.
Yes.
Who was it? Was it Jim Moore? What do you think about execution? He's like, I'm all for it.
All for it, yeah, right? The old Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah. Really, it is as simple as cleaning it up, right?
Yeah.
Not to insult anybody's intelligence,
no.
But as well as I do with the red area issues the last 2 weeks, the turnovers. You can't expect to survive by doing that. It's not to oversimplify it, but I think it's that easy, right?
Well said. I don't think that's exactly right. We have to score when we're in the red area, not just field goal opportunities, touchdowns, and we can't give the ball away. When you're careless with the football, and when we've turned the ball over now as many times as we have the last 2 weeks, our probability of winning the football game, and you mentioned Vegas and all, not very good.
No. It's a very, very skinny limb to try to survive on. There's
right.
No doubt, and you don't have any more hair to lose. So let's get that cleaned up. All right.
Well, but then the glass half full is, we still ultimately won the game on Saturday.
Well,
right?
Because you created 5 of your own.
Right.
Yeah. That's what it boiled down to,
No question.
and that's sort of been to come full circle, and that I think that's today's lesson. Whether it was on the run game or that third down defense, when it came down to rug cutting time, on both sides of the ball, you made plays. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask.
Absolutely. And, we can't keep playing roulette. The odds just aren't in our favor. And, but the nice thing about football, Joe, and you know this, and I'll grab this, I'm sorry, is every week you hit the reset button, right? So you take the good, you take the bad, we make our corrections, we learn from it, and we continue to go. And that's where I think mature football teams understand that Cal's going to provide a completely different challenge than Bloomsburg did. And now we get an opportunity to hit the reset button, learn lessons from lessons past, and let's go out and wipe the slate clean. We have a great opportunity in front of us. We just got to go out and execute.
All right, we are done for now. A pregame show is going to be at 11 o'clock. The pregame show is built by Hobbs Lumber, and of course the Fighting Scots Radio Network, presented by ErieInjury.com. You can listen a variety of different ways. We won't have video this week because being on the road, but you'll be able to go to the homepage and listen through the link there. For Jake Nulph, I'm Joe Lodanosky. Thanks to everybody here at the Edinburgh Hotel who came down to hang out. And, of course, we appreciate your support and continued support as we play California this weekend. I guess that's it, man.
Hey, thanks a lot, Joe. Really appreciate it. Go Burrow.
All right, we'll do it again next week. Thanks for joining us here for the Jake Nulph Show.